As the poem moves towards its conclusion, it gathers even greater intensity, even greater concentration, even greater power. It becomes the incantation of a witch. And the incantation of a witch cannot be, should not be subjected to literal interpretation. An incantation cannot be interpreted. An incantation can only be experienced. Ash, ash, you poke and stir, flesh, bone, there is nothing there. I said that an incantation cannot be, should not be interpreted. An incantation should be experienced. But here, after all is said and done, we are dealing with a poem, and a poem has to be interpreted. I wonder whether Sylvia Plath is once again alluding to the concentration camp. The Jews were burnt to death. Is that in the mind of Sylvia Plath? Ash, ash, you poke and stir, flesh, bone, there is nothing there. The Jews who entered the concentration camp were converted into ash. Their lives came to an end. Flesh, bone, there is nothing there. The Jew entered the concentration camp as a human being, but he came out of the concentration camp as ash. Or is Sylvia Plath making a very wide philosophical generalization that ultimately, at the end of the day, life is nothing. Everything is nothing. Life is nothing but ash. Ash, ash, you poke and stir, flesh, bone, there is nothing there. Every life, any life, is ultimately nothing but a handful of ash. Perhaps Sylvia Plath had in mind a very famous passage in the Holy Bible. Dust thou art, and unto dust thou shalt return. Genesis 3:19. A cake of soap, a wedding ring, a gold filling. Is the mind of the poet going yet again to the concentration camp, to the Nazis, to the Jews? For the Nazis had the habit of making use of material extracted from the bodies of the massacred Jews to create objects. For example, soap was made. Soap was made using human fat extracted from the bodies of the Jewish victims by the Nazis. Or is it again some very expansive, some very wide philosophical statement? Is the poet trying to encapsulate the entire chronicle of human existence in just 3 short lines? A cake of soap, a wedding ring, a gold filling. Is this what human life is? A cake of soap could stand for the daily routine. You have to take bath. You have to use soap. A cake of soap represents the daily human routine. No human being can live, can exist without this daily routine. Your wedding ring can symbolize relationships, not merely the relationship between spouses, but all kinds of relationships. There is no human existence without relationships. So you have the daily routine from which you cannot escape, inescapable daily routine, and you have the equally inescapable relationships, a gold filling. This could be something which stands for material possessions. Again, you cannot avoid them. It is very difficult to avoid material possessions, especially when you lead a worldly life. It is true that monks, it is true that yogis, it's true that sannyasis give up most of their material possessions. But even they have to have at least some possessions. These are three things which cannot be escaped from in a human life. And probably the poet makes it clear that this is what human life is. Human life is daily routine, relationships, and material possessions. And ultimately, all this ends up as ash. Her God, her Lucifer, beware, beware. The poet is probably once again thinking of the doctor who saved her life, who is simultaneously God and Lucifer, who is simultaneously the personification of good and the personification of evil. It depends on your viewpoint. It depends on from which perspective you see him. The doctor is God. He's Mr. God because he saved the life of the girl. The doctor is Lucifer, Mr. Lucifer, because he destroyed the opportunity that the girl had to escape from the torments of this life. So the poet says, Mr. God, Mr. Lucifer, beware, beware. Do you know what you have done? Are you fully aware of the significance of what you have done? I doubt it. I ask you to be on the alert, to be wary of. Mr. God, Mr. Lucifer, beware, beware. Perhaps we can allow this stanza to have a different exegesis. Perhaps the poet has in mind God himself. It is not the doctor, it is God himself. And God is certainly not a good God. He has many aspects of the devil in him. You must try to see matters from the perspective of a suicide victim. Mr. God, Mr. Lucifer, beware, beware. If God were nothing but good, if God were God alone, why is there so much suffering in this world? Why is it that the speaker, for example, has to lead a life of so much torment and torture? Mr. God, Mr. Lucifer. You must understand that these are the two sides of the same coin. From the poet's perspective, from the speaker's perspective, God is God and also Lucifer. God is God and also Satan. God is God and also the devil. So the poet says to God, who is also devil, who is also the devil, beware, beware. Be cautious of, be on the alert, be on your guard, be wary of, beware, beware.